So to talk to us about that this morning, about finding the best solicitor when you need to, we have Cora Sherlock. How are you, Cora? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Kieran. I'm great. Sure, it's sunny. Isn't that fantastic?
It is only fantastic, and I hope it lasts long enough. I hope it lasts long enough that we actually hear some of the usual things of people going, oh, when will this heat ever end and stuff like that.
Please God.
If it lasts a couple of days, we'll do well.
Exactly.
Cora, if someone's looking for a solicitor, they're probably going to ask somebody for a recommendation. But what should they be asking if they're trying to figure out whether someone would be a good fit as a solicitor for them? Have you any tips for us on what they should be thinking about?
Yeah, sure. And I think, like you say, people do tend to ask around. It's just one of those things that maybe you're more inclined to do, rather than if you need a dentist or a doctor, you do ask people, what solicitor did you use? I think, there are some really important questions. I think you need to break it down a little bit, not just to say, was that person good? There's a couple of things I would say. Firstly, obviously, you're going to think about the fee and how much they charge. But even more so than that, what's more important is to say, did you think they were good value for money? Because you're going to have to pay a solicitor anyway, but you need to say, was this solicitor worth paying? Did they return calls? Did they explain things clearly for you? That sort of thing is really important. And I also think it's important that you have a good personal connection with the solicitor, because that's very important. You need to know that you can talk to them, raise questions, tell them that you're worried about something, and they're not going to think that you're overreacting. So a solicitor you have to find somebody who you have a good connection with and that you can trust.
Well, trust is very important, because usually when you're dealing with a solicitor, it's over matters of importance, let's say. They're not simple, trivial things, usually.
Yeah.
So, on the show last week, we actually had an estate agent who was talking about how important selecting a good solicitor is when you're going to buy or sell a home. That's something I think you're particularly focused on. We spoke about a little bit before we came on air. So, what do you think, what are the advantages of having a solicitor in the process when you're buying and selling property? Imagine in some cases you have to have one anyway, but there's people probably aren't aware of exactly how that can help them through the whole process of buying and selling property.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a good solicitor is a big part of your whole home buying process. And what I say to people is, get your solicitor as soon as possible. Maybe even before you've started looking at properties, get somebody on board who you can go to and ask questions about. So I would do that. And also, because a solicitor can advise you on a couple of things that may not spring to mind, there are a lot of government schemes out to help people buy houses. There was a new one introduced last week. So your solicitor will be able to give you advice and maybe point you in the direction of one of those if they do apply to you. The other thing to remember is get them as early as possible, because your solicitor will probably never see your property, or maybe until you ask them around for a house warming, which will be after you buy it. So anything that you see at the viewing stage is important to pass on to your solicitor. If you think, there's a boundary trampled down or a hedge that looks like there's a hole in it, that's an important thing to tell your solicitor, because they'll need to check the boundary. So get one as quickly as possible, and it will make the whole process a lot easier.
Okay, so early is always good for most things, I think. Makes sense. Now, when things get difficult and tricky, obviously that's where, like a lot of professions, that's where having a good solicitor really pays off. And there are some pitfalls people can fall into, and quite common ones, I think, that can really slow down and make things just a very difficult process. And I guess having the right solicitor that works for you can help mitigate that as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the thing about delays is you need to have somebody who works through them, but not kind of panic you about them. Somebody that will just break it down and say, look, not just here's a delay, but here's what we can do about it. So that when you hear there's something, that someone is in charge and they will push it through. They'll get over the delay or the speed bump or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is this is probably one of the more stressful things people will do in their lives, certainly one of their biggest investments. And it's great to have someone calm to kind of just keep you on the straight and narrow as you go through it, because it is stressful.
Yeah. I mean, you need somebody who's above the emotion of it, who's above the sort of, when are we getting our keys? We need to get removal men in, that sort of thing. You need somebody who's just going to deal with the factual side of it, the paperwork, and put that out of your way. You don't have to think about that.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned a free ebook that helps people when they're thinking about viewing homes and property purchases, etc. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we have an ebook, as you say, it's free. It can be downloaded off the website, which is corasherlocksolicitors.ie. And it is quite useful because it just puts into your mind the things that maybe you need to think about when you're viewing a house. Some of them are a bit off the beaten track. They're not things that maybe you would think about immediately, but they are really important. And I think they'll focus the mind very particularly on what you need from your property and what to look out for when you're viewing.
Excellent. So that sounds like a super resource. Cora, where can people contact you if they need more, they're interested and need more information?
Yeah, all of my information is on my website, which is probably the easiest way to find me. It's corasherlocksolicitors.ie, and we have a lot of information there about buying and selling and how you can speed things up and just get through the process as smoothly as possible.
That sounds great. Thank you very much, Cora. Really appreciate you talking to us this morning, and I'm sure the listeners do too, if they're fortunate enough to be in the position that they're buying a house, which a lot of people aspire to at the moment. So hope you have a great day and get to enjoy the beautiful weather.
And you, Kieran. Thanks a million.
We'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much indeed.